Sunday morning on day two of this 4th of July holiday weekend, and the best weather lies ahead of us and not behind us. Tropical Storm Colin is gone. The severe weather threats are done. Humidity levels are dropping. We've got things going on in other parts of the country. We shall examine them all closely under the Joe and Joe Weather Show magnifying glass. And here we are, all magnified for everybody. Good morning, Mr. Rayo. Morning, everybody on the
Morning,
chat board.
Joe. Oh, morning. We've got all the bad weather, as you said, behind us, and now we've got some nice weather for today and nice for tomorrow, and then back to work on Tuesday. And that's when the weather will turn downward again. But at least we've got a couple of nice days for all of our viewers to enjoy.
Yep. I don't know how much you paid attention to what was going on yesterday, but I have to say that yesterday was probably one of the strangest weather days that I've seen in quite a while. I woke up. I wake up early, so I was up at 6 o'clock. I did my weather stuff that I do. Then I took JJ to the dog park, and it was about 9:30, and I look on my phone, and there's Tropical Storm Colin, and I thought, where did this come from? And then I go to I go to the NHC website, and I know they had mentioned that area of that area of weather off the North Carolina coast with a 10% chance of development. I didn't even give it a second thought, and it got upgraded to a tropical storm. I mean, they had a tight little low that formed. I have to tell you though, upon examination yesterday and seeing what was going on, first of all, I know they probably. I'm guessing they probably went off the radars in terms of maybe they had some buoy obs way offshore, but that had 35 or 40 knot winds. There wasn't a single wind that I saw along, even on the immediate coast, that was over 20 sustained was over 20 miles an hour. And there was what little rain there was very patchy. Yeah, I mean, maybe it checked all the boxes for the Hurricane Center, and I'm not being critical of them from that standpoint because they follow criteria. But you got to wonder. I mean, this is the type of system that back years ago would never have seen the light of day as a named tropical storm.
Well, it's just like what we've been talking about for the last several years, the fact that we have so many new tropical systems that are developing each season, and then we make comparisons to, let's say, 10, 20, 30 years ago, and we see that the amount of tropical activity has gone up, and maybe it's not going up because of climate change and global warming. Maybe it's going up because there are a couple of individuals at the Hurricane Center who feel that they know more than their colleagues and talk them into, hey, we really ought to give this a better look. We ought to possibly assign this a name or do something about it. And, as you just said, and you've been in the business for a good number of years, you looked at it, you checked it out, you said, well, it doesn't really look like it's going to matter. But somebody out there must have said, hey, we ought to give this a name, and it got a name. And now it goes into the record books as Colin, even though really, really, really,
Really?
it didn't deserve a name. It just deserved being an offshore or a coast-hugging coastal system.
Well,
But like I said, we've been saying this for years now, that the abundance of tropical activity maybe is not necessarily due to what's going on in the atmosphere, but maybe judgmental decisions that are being made by individuals at the Storm Prediction Center or the Hurricane Center in saying, yeah, this deserves a name, and we ought to give it. It's ridiculous. It's ridiculous when you
well,
say one day 10% probability of development, and then the very next day, boom! Not only is it moved forward in terms of possible development, but it even now has a name. I mean, come on, give me a
Well,
break.
how much of the fact that it was a holiday weekend played into this, and it was impacting coastal North Carolina, the beaches on the Outer Banks? I don't, I don't know the answer to that question. And by the way, the numbers may actually not necessarily be going up because we saw what happened back a couple of months ago when the Hurricane Center released their review of the 1965 to 1970 period, and what did they do? They added for those 5 years. What did they add? Like 14 storms that weren't
Yeah.
on the table before, didn't exist before. Now have been classified as tropical systems. Some of them even classified as hurricanes. So, you know, my guess is, I don't know this for a fact, but I'm thinking maybe they're doing these sort of 5 year review segments, 65 to
You know,
70, 70 to 75,
why doesn't
75
the
to 80, and they're going to come up with more storms uh, to add to what's already there. And
and it adds to the confusion. It adds to the confusion. Let me just say that they should look at baseball and take a tip from baseball. Baseball in recent years, recent decades, have discovered a number of different things. Did you know, Joe, for example, for years Babe Ruth had 714 home runs, and then a computer discovered that he actually had 715 because back in the late teens or early 20s, if a ball was hit over the fence and you had the winning run come around from, let's say,
right,
second or third base,
it didn't.
then Ruth would only get credited for a double or a triple, but not a home run.
Right.
How about that atrocity of 5 or 10 years ago where that pitcher pitched a perfect game and the umpire in the final out said, "No, he's safe. He's safe." And that ruined the chances for this kid to have a perfect game. Of course, today that would have been a perfect game because we now have ways to look on the tape and see that it really was a case where the guy was out and not stay. But you know what? Baseball said, we're not doing anything about it. We're not changing any of the records. We're not changing Babe Ruth. We're not going to change Galarraga, who threw the perfect game, or a skew of other records, because if it does, it's just going to ruin the whole aspect of the game and change. And that's what the Hurricane Center should be doing. Instead of looking back on things and saying, oh, well, this was a storm and that was a storm, and we should have given this a name and that a name, and we should have raised this up. Forget it. Leave everything as it was, as it is. What was said and what was done is done. That's what they should be doing, not screwing everything up and screwing the whole, because it screws up the climatology too. It screws up the numbers.
Well,
We based we
yeah,
based
it does.
we based our knowledge of hurricanes. We said, well, there was an average of, let's say, I'm pulling a number out of the way, 9.6 storms per year, whatever like that. But then if you start adding storms from other years that should have been storms, then all of a sudden the climatology gets thrown out the window, and now you have to change everything, all the numbers. Leave it alone. Leave it alone. That's what I would say. And again, yesterday there was no way in the world. I don't claim to be a hurricane expert or a tropical storm expert. I've said for years I'm just in terms of meteorology, I'm just
A GP horse doctor is what you are.
well,
Yeah,
you know,
like
a
me.
practitioner,
Right.
a practitioner. I'm not, but you know what? This practitioner looks at everything over the last 48 hours and says, it's absurd. It's ridiculous that you named the storm after 24 hours earlier. You were saying it's not going to have any chance of being anything. You know, the mind boggles,
No, it
Joe.
is. It's
The
mind.
mind
It is.
actually
It
boggles.
is mind-boggling. It really is. Now, Here's the other strange part of yesterday. So yesterday afternoon, and of course, we all know what happens whenever I cut a video. The minute I'm done cutting the video and posting it, something happens where it would need it to be changed. For example, if I put up, I put up my Weather in 5 video, and I specifically said yesterday as the video ended, I just said SPC is going to be issuing severe thunderstorm watches probably as soon as this video is over with. And sure enough, they issue two severe thunderstorm watches after having issued mesoscale discussions saying that it was likely that they were going to issue two severe thunderstorm watches. Okay, well, fine. That's all fine and dandy. So I don't know if you saw this, but this really, this just sort of like, I don't know, it just left me, I don't want to, maybe stunned is a bit of a strong way of putting it, but it did raise my eyebrows. So you can't see it completely, but the two severe thunderstorm watches were put up, one covering a couple of counties in northeastern PA, bordered on the New York state line, Connecticut, from there north and east. From there north and east to Boston, severe thunderstorm watch. Then A second severe thunderstorm watch, if you draw a line from, say, Sandy Hook to about Allentown and then go southwest from there, from that point southward, was a severe thunderstorm watch. In between the northern New Jersey counties, New York City, Long Island, no watch. And the irony, by the way, was the fact that there was at least the one severe thunderstorm warning that I saw was in central and eastern Long Island in the area where they had no
Right,
watch that was put up. Now,
right,
I
right.
I really, I mean, as it turned out yesterday, and this is going to lead to a mini rant inside all of this for me. I mean, as it turned out, the severe thunderstorms, underperform. I don't know if they really underperformed because when I looked at all the models really didn't show very much as far as the extent of thunderstorm activity, which always makes it a dicey proposition if you're forecasting them because unless it's an obvious widespread event with a cold front and a line, it's you're going to have areas that are going to get them and some areas didn't. And I think yesterday afternoon was a great example of where most areas wound up not getting storms. But apparently, I saw a lot of people, mostly in New Jersey, complaining about the fact that fireworks shows were canceled yesterday, and apparently some of these shows, Joe, were canceled off of what they saw on apps and on weather apps because they had the thunderstorm icon for a certain time and maybe
Right.
a high percentage chance. And what I'm going to say is if you're making weather decisions, um, look, it's one thing if you're making a weather decision about whether you're going to go out to the store and buy a loaf of bread. Okay, that's a different story. But when you're making a weather decision that's based on that's going to impact people, if you're doing it off a weather app, you get what you deserve. Seriously, you get what you deserve. If you're doing it without even consulting with somebody, this is not a pitch to bring you and I business. But for God's sake, have you gotten to the point where you absolutely, you go to these weather apps that are all computer, it's all computer generated, model generated outcomes. If you're making decisions based on that and it doesn't turn out, and it turns out differently, I'm sorry, you get what you deserve. That's all.
Well, it's
That's my
like
opinion.
back in the day, and I was at a private weather service in the 1980s where we were doing the weather for both the Yankees and the Mets, and we would provide. I mean, every morning at 8 o'clock, the phone would ring, and I would pick it up, and I would talk to Pete Flynn, the head groundskeeper at Shea Stadium. And he and I would get into a conversation, a discussion as to what may or may not happen. And as the day progressed, we would provide the New York Mets, for example, with latest updates as to where certain storms are going. Now, when I watch a baseball game, when I watch a Met game, here I'm seeing a color radar graphic coming up, which obviously was pulled up from some online or internet website. And you see Gary Cohen and Ron Darling. They are the announcers for the New York Mets, commenting upon where a storm is going. Well, it's going this way. And now, yeah, it looks like we may have a storm in about 40 minutes or so. And I'm saying to myself, really, when did you guys get your BS in meteorology? When did all they're doing is just looking at where the cells are. They don't have any real knowledge as to whether a storm may dissipate or may take a turn to the north or to the south. They just arbitrarily, and I guess that's how they forecast the weather at many baseball games today. Most MLB play, just like what you just said, places that have staging a big fireworks display, they're relying on their apps,
Yeah.
and or they're going online and looking. They don't have anything to back up what they're looking at. They're just making an arbitrary decision based upon what they see or what they think. And that's the way things are going
Right.
now.
And you know what?
To save the money,
right. And
to
you also
save the money, honey.
Yeah, and you also
Yeah.
you also have no you have absolutely no right to not you, Joe. I'm just saying in general. Some of these people
No,
in the
but
pub.
it's the way things are going.
No,
This is the way our society has been geared toward. You know,
no.
I
Then
mean, we
and
went through
then
a
and then and then
depression.
they and then they
We
complain.
went through a
Then they complain about it, which makes it's like you get what you deserve.
But again, this is what it is. It's trying to save every little cent. It's trying to cut corners. That's why things are not the way they were 20, 30, 40 years ago. That's the way it is. So I'm absolutely 100% behind you. They get what they deserve if they do that. They just and disappoint hundreds or thousands of families and kids. You're looking forward to it all week. Big fireworks display, and then all of a sudden, the guy who's in charge looks on his app, sees a 70% chance of thunderstorms. But by the way, Joe, that was the other thing that blew my mind, because you're absolutely right. Yesterday morning, and looking at all of the data and all of the information, yeah, there was a chance that we may see a couple of thunderstorms here and there, and one or two might be gusty or strong. I looked on the SPC site yesterday on the forecast. They had our area. In fact, they had from Philadelphia all the way up almost to Boston shaded in red. It's very, very unusual when you see a 70% probability
Yeah.
of thunderstorms. That's where we were yesterday. And yesterday, I'm outside at 5 o'clock in the afternoon with my wife cutting weeds and doing whatever stuff. And it's bright and sunny. The humidity was high. And I'm saying to myself, all right, where is it?
Well,
Where
all
are the
right,
storms? I
and
went
you know
back
what?
inside.
And
I
that's
saw I saw one over near Port Jervis. I saw one down Long Island, which is what you mentioned. But most of the area was free and clear. And I'm saying this is what ranked a 70% chance for thunderstorms. And again, in the morning when I looked at the stuff, I said, yeah, there might be a couple of thunderstorms. That's exactly how it turned out. 70%? Why? And that 70% probably was what led to a lot of fireworks displays and a lot of disappointment among families yesterday in the afternoon and evening. Very, very
well.
bad forecasting.
Look, and here's the thing: everything through the morning, at least into early afternoon. I was looking at some of these obs. Mount Holly, I think at 1 o'clock was 93. Okay, the dew point was 70. You had ridiculously high dew points. You had all. One of the things I was concerned about was the fact that we had that rain area move overnight into early Saturday morning. And as well as I do, sometimes when that happens, the atmosphere gets basically gets unstabilized, if you want to call it. In other words, it was unstable to begin with, and now it becomes more stable. So it lessens the threat for thunderstorms later in the day. Maybe that had something to do with it. And yet, noticing the fact when I saw that the dew points and the temperatures, it's like SPC in their discussion were talking about really steep lapse rates, and that they were basically ideal for very strong thunderstorm development. I think they even mentioned supercells in there. And then it didn't happen, or it barely happened. Okay, that's the nature of summertime. These small, very, very small scale climate events that it's a totally different situation when you've got overrunning rain that where it's raining for hundreds and hundreds of miles in all directions. If you don't understand the nature of how, if you're a person who's absorbing this information and you don't understand that concept, you really have no business talking. You really have no business watching a weathercast. You don't. Okay. If you're going to come back at somebody that says there's going to be some scattered afternoon or evening thunderstorms, and the fact that you didn't get them is a problem for you, well, you clearly are ignorant about how weather works in situations like this. Sometimes you're going to get
Well,
them, sometimes you're not.
I'm sure the people who are going to be who are behind the Macy's fireworks display tomorrow night, I would hope, God help us, I would hope that the people at Macy's are not relying on something that's coming off of their iPhone. I would hope that for something like that, a major event like that, that they actually do have a reputable, a credible weather forecasting service. They don't need it, obviously, because tomorrow is going to be a beautiful day, so there aren't going to be any thunderstorms. But in a situation like what we had yesterday, I hope that they're not relying on just an app, that they're relying on a service that will provide them with moment-by-moment instructions and predictions as to whether or not there will indeed be any thunderstorms in the vicinity at the time when the fireworks display. But I mean, these smaller companies or these townships that say, hey, we don't have to spend all that money on a weather service. I think I've got a phone and I'll just look at the app. And they follow the app, and well, you saw what happened
Yeah.
yesterday or last evening for some.
So, quick story. As far as non-weather story, I think you'll get a kick out of this. So Thursday, I couldn't stand it anymore. My hair, I needed a haircut. So I drove into Pixley, as I do when I need to get a haircut, and I went over to Floyd's barber shop, and the woman who cuts my hair she looks at me and she says, "What happened to your leg?" So I start to tell her the story about the fact of what happened, and as soon as I mentioned the word dog park, she says, "Oh, was that you?" I said, "Yeah. Why do you ask?" And she says, "Oh, it's all over town. Everybody knows that what happened to you at the dog park." And I immediately thought, you know what? This is Floyd's barber shop. Everybody in the barber shop knew. Everybody that was waiting for a haircut knew about my about the whole leg thing. Which, by the way, Thursday I find out when the screw comes out, which is good. So we'll deal with that when we get there. So I've basically been spent. I've discovered, Joe. I don't know if you have Amazon Prime, uh, but there's a channel on Amazon Prime called Freevee. Freevee, Freeevee, and they run the TV shows, and they have commercials, but they're actually quite short. There may be 15 or 30-second commercial breaks. So I started binge watching the Perry Mason. So I'm into episode 15. Into episode 15 of the first season. I got a long way to go.
Oh, that's a great episode. I'm waiting for that. That episode is going to be aired on MeTV on Tuesday, and I really am looking forward to that. And the reason why I'm looking forward to that is that on episode 15
Yeah.
of the first season, Judy Tyler was one of the main people on that show. And if you're wondering who Judy Tyler is, if you were a fan, and this goes back to all of you old timers, if you were a fan of the TV show Howdy Doody, Judy Tyler played the role of Princess Summer, Fall, Winter, Spring. Joe, now this is serious now. In the
Oh, I'm
1950s,
sure it
they were
is.
making money off of. In the 1950s, they were making money off of Howdy Doody, they being the NBC network, hand over fist. And then somebody came up and said, well, it's real nice that you've got such a wholesome show, but the main character is a boy, Howdy Doody. And the main character who runs him is Buffalo Bob Smith. Don't you think you ought to have something to appease to the young girls in the audience? And so they had a puppet, an Indian puppet that they named Princess Summer, Fall, Winter, Spring, which was nice. But then they said, maybe we ought to make this into something a little bit more tangible. So they turned the puppet. They had a big, on one of the shows, there was a big celebration, and magically a puff of smoke, and the puppet became a real live person. And the person was Judy Tyler, dressed up as Princess Summer, Fall, Winter, Spring. Joe, this was one of the most talented she was like 18 or 19 years old. She could sing like Judy Garland. She could belt out a tune like Ethel Merman. She could dance. She could act. She was everything rolled up into a ball, and they said this young lady was going to become a superstar. And she was on the way to becoming a superstar. She appeared with Elvis Presley in the movie Jailhouse Rock. And after that, she started appearing on television. Now, I've never seen her perform. I want to see this Perry Mason episode 15 of season 1, because by then she was 25 years old, and she was, again, on her way to becoming a superstar. P.S. Sadly, she and her husband were out in the desert driving from one state to another, had a car accident, killed.
Oh.
They must have hit the car head on or killed. A career completely destroyed, a soul on its way up to the great beyond. Elvis Presley was so devastated by this that to his dying day, he never saw Jailhouse Rock because, again, Judy Tyler was his co-star, and after this all happened, he couldn't take it anymore. And again, so Judy Tyler was in that Perry Mason episode, and I just want to see her in that episode because, again, growing up, all I knew her as was Princess Summer, Fall, Winter, Spring. But I think that episode of Perry Mason actually aired some weeks after she was killed. So it's a very somber type episode in a way. But when you mentioned that one, did you watch the episode, or did you get up to that episode?
The court adjourned for the day at 5 o'clock, just as our show started. So I paused it, and I will go back to it when we're over with. By the way,
now you know interesting backdrop
right?
to the very attractive young lady on that show.
Yes, well, you'll also notice it was typical of you'll notice on that episode in a big way, the style of women being dressed in very very tight tops with what they used to call steel pointed breasts, where the body would
Oh,
turn and then the breasts would just sort of follow, or if they turned too fast, they would take somebody's head off. But it was kind of, it's so obvious on this episode. A lot of the shots are very much, top focused. It's hysterical, actually.
well, in the book, Say Kids, What Time Is It, which details from start to finish the history of the Howdy Doody show. When they talk about Judy Tyler, let's just say that Judy Tyler was very, very popular among all of the stage hands
I'll bet.
on that show.
I'll bet.
So I'll leave it there.
All right, we have two super chat we have two super chat hits, one from Chuck Cardillo today and one from Bill Uber. Thanks to both of you for doing that. So let's, we ate about almost a half an hour with these rants and things, and it's just as well because as far as weather is concerned, really not much is happening. So I'm going to start with the U.S. the Eastern satellite loop, and then we'll go to the full U.S. one, and it is actually, Joe, it's right on time. And we had the front just kind of got hung up a little bit to the south this morning. Leaving clouds, and there was still actually a little bit of activity left on the radar in parts of South Jersey. That should be done soon, but it is rapidly clearing out from west to east, and that is also coming with a nice drop in the dew points for this afternoon and tonight into tomorrow. But you look at this satellite view, I mean, it's crystal clear now from north and west of New York City, northern New Jersey, just about all of Pennsylvania, upstate New York, Vermont, New Hampshire, into Maine, Western Mass, Western Connecticut, and the areas to the southeast are going to clear out in short order as this front just continues to move southward. And you can see where the bad, by the way, is. It's east-west across West Virginia, Maryland, and Delaware to Delmarva. And then you go south into Virginia, North and South Carolina. It's clear again on the warm side. So it's just this frontal boundary. It's done. And now we can move on. And I think tomorrow's going to be a really nice day overall. Warm in the low to mid 80s. Humidity levels should be relatively reasonable.
I agree. And by the way, getting back to the cloud cover, I noticed yesterday on the 12Z Foose yesterday that the R1, the low level of relative humidity, was still as high as 94% at LaGuardia as of 8 o'clock this morning, but then it dropped to something like 45% by 2 o'clock this afternoon. I looked at that and I said, well, there's probably going to be a lot of low level cloud cover to kick off the day today. But I also see, by the way this R1 level is declining or dropping, that whatever we have in terms of cloud cover by 8 a.m. will be very quickly gone by 2 o'clock. And sure enough, that was the story today. Whatever cloud cover is gone, the sun is out. It's a lovely Sunday for all, and it will be a nice, lovely night tonight. I know a lot of fireworks displays will be going on tonight. I know right up here in the Hudson Valley, Kensico Dam is having their big fireworks display, not tomorrow night, but tonight. So if you love to head on out there, if you're in the vicinity, that display should kick off real good. And tomorrow, of course, tomorrow evening, the big fireworks display along the East River, the Macy's display, and that too should turn out all right, as well as all the other displays that'll be going on in and around the tri-state area.
Yeah, no doubt. No weather issues. In fact, skies are clear back to the Great Lakes, the Upper Ohio Valley. Just nice weather there. Southeast is very warm to hot, but nothing exceptional. We've got you see some lightning flashes going on in parts of southern Arkansas. There is going to be some severe weather up in the northern plains. Look at the satellite loop. There's a fairly well-defined shortwave trough that's moving through the Pacific Northwest and heading eastward, so that'll be the trigger mechanism for some severe weather later today. Here's the radar. Just going to update this real quick. And all the showers are just about done with now that we're still hanging around South Jersey and parts of Delaware. I mean, there's just a couple of echoes left on the radar that in the next hour they'll be done. Also in southeastern New England, and over eastern Long Island. A little bit of light rain here. That should be done too. So it's those areas will see decreasing clouds and increasing sun as we move through the afternoon. In the southeast right now, it's fairly quiet. There's some scattered cells in the mountains of North Carolina, into North Georgia near me. That's kind of how it's been here for the last couple of weeks, where I get these pop-up thunderstorms here in northeast Georgia, and if you get into them, they don't last very long. If you don't get into them, you could hear them because they're all around you. But most of the time, it's been fine. Some showers on the northwest coast of Florida to the Panhandle, and also along parts of the Gulf Coast around southern Mississippi and Alabama. We've got that activity we talked about in Arkansas, the northern plains. Setting up for severe weather today. The Storm Prediction Center has a slight risk in Nebraska, South Dakota, southern North Dakota, enhanced risk, southwest North Dakota into Montana. In the east, some marginal risk in southeastern Virginia, North and South Carolina. And as far as tornado risk is concerned, there's a 2% tornado risk in the areas up in Montana, and also in a three-state area here, South Dakota, North Dakota, Minnesota, near where the borders touch. The day two outlook, which is for Monday into Tuesday, shows a slight risk in northern Illinois, southern Wisconsin, eastern Iowa, southeastern Minnesota, and also the western half of South Dakota into North Dakota and Montana. Still no thunderstorms being forecast unless you're in the general thunderstorm line is in central and western Pennsylvania and western New York on westward and southward. And that, by the way, could be more along the lines of Monday night rather than during the daytime on Monday. WPC rainfall this week of a half to 3/4 of an inch, and then it picks up down into Virginia, North Carolina. We're up to several inches of rain is forecast. That old frontal boundary probably hanging out, impacting eastern North Carolina. Otherwise, it's a half an inch to some pockets of an inch and a half down to Florida. Also in the central Appalachians, some pockets of a couple of inches up into northern Illinois, through the northern plains and into Montana. Rainfall amounts of half an inch to some places an inch and a half. The monsoon is kind of confined to New Mexico and into Colorado. It's dry to the west of there. So, Joe, I'm looking at the, once again, this is a broken record here. Just looking at the overnight guidance, the guidance from yesterday, as far as the upper air pattern is concerned, I see absolutely nothing that even remotely changes the overall theme, which is troughing in the east, and now ridging in the west, shifting more to the west, to the Rockies. So more shortwave troughs dropping through for every couple of days into the eastern part of the United States, and that just kind of means the same thing. It gets hot for a day, at most two, then the front goes by, then it gets drier for a day or maybe two, and on it goes. I mean, there's nothing here to me that says, hey, we're going into a different pattern. So if you're looking for prolonged hot weather, don't even bother get on a plane since they cancel flights anyway. Head down Texas. The southern part of the United States is going to be hot, but that's what it does down in the southern part of the United States during the summertime.
Yeah, I have. My kids are going on a trip to Europe. My son and my daughter-in-law. They're going in a few weeks, and thinking about it, I wish them the best of luck, because the way the people you are running into all these problems on flights, you may need a vacation from the vacation after all the aggravation that you're going. And I can remember we went through, Bernard and I went through that aggravation when we traveled south to South America last December. We left on the final day of the Thanksgiving holiday, if you can believe that. And that in itself was a heck of a stretch. So good luck to all, and hopefully the weather will be on your side whenever you do plan to leave for wherever you're planning to go.
I've loaded the tropical Atlantic satellite loop. Well, I did, and then I tried to add some frames to it. So Now it's kind of stuck.
What happened to the system that we were promoting back? I think it was on Wednesday or Thursday, the one that was going to go past the shoreline of Venezuela and cut across Central America and regenerate
Oh,
in the
well,
Pacific.
well, well, it did. I mean, it became a tropical storm yesterday. Bonnie became a tropical storm in the Southwest Caribbean yesterday, crossed Central America, and now is a strengthening tropical storm on the other side. It kept its name, and we did get the file. We had an example. So here's how it works. If a storm crosses over from either the Atlantic or the Pacific into the Pacific, or from the Pacific into the Atlantic, if it maintains an identifiable closed circulation, in other words, it maintains its name status. So even if it's downgraded to a tropical depression, it would maintain its name status. But once it loses that, if the weather from that goes out and regenerates, and we saw that happen with Tropical Storm Alex, because that generated from the remnants of Pacific Hurricane Agatha. But Agatha did not survive. The center did not survive the trip over Mexico, so it was treated as a new system. But as long as it's got an identifiable closed circulation, in other words, as long as it stays a named storm as it crosses land and it comes out the other side as a named storm, it keeps its name. And you know what? That to me, that's a good way. It makes sense to me.
Yes, it does, and it also it also avoids all of the silly commentary that you get on some of the news programs. Oh, it started out as Joan, and now it's Harvey that it's
Right.
moved across. Enough with that. We don't have to deal with those kind of jokes anymore. So now we don't have to deal with it. It maintains its identity when it does make the crossing in most cases, as was the case with Bonnie over the last couple of days.
Right. And by the way, just looking at the Atlantic loop, unlike last week where we had all these tropical waves across the intertropical convergence zone from Africa to South America, and they were too far south to begin with. Now it's gone quiet there. There's just some patchy clouds and some showers, but the waves that are coming out off the African coast are weak at the moment, which is pretty much typical. And just from the standpoint of interest, why don't we just I'll bring up the Hurricane Center website, and we can, as I said, Colin is gone, so thankfully they got rid of it at 5 this morning. So Bonnie is now at top winds are 65 miles an hour on the Pacific side, and here's the forecast track. Forecast to become a hurricane today, and if not today, certainly by tomorrow morning, and just on a west-northwest course offshore into the open waters of the Pacific, and eventually it'll wind up in the Pacific graveyard. Meanwhile, for our week ahead, okay, so our front is through. We've got our nice weather for tomorrow. We've got another weather front coming for Tuesday with maybe the chance for some showers and thunderstorms again. The front it's like a lead trough. I'm sick of these things. Just you get these lead troughs that run out ahead. The main cold front lags behind. It's like, can you just come on? Do you have to do that? Can you just come as one piece and just get it over with? But the main front on the GFS is through early Wednesday morning. Another dry air mass behind that. Yada yada yada. Then another front that looks like it comes through sometime next Saturday with showers and thunderstorms, blah, blah, blah. Dry, cool air mass behind that. And then, as I said, and on it goes. I can't remember. I mean, I know the pattern gets kind of static at times, during the late spring and summer months, but there's usually a little bit of variability. This is really unusual because we've been stuck in this for quite a while now, and we're going to be stuck in it for quite a while yet.
It's not going to end for a while. You're absolutely right, and uh, so long as the extreme heat or the day after day after day heat remains locked in place over the central states, I feel sorry for the people who live in the central and southern plains because they've really been going through a sweltering summer so far. But as long as it stays there, and all we have to do is deal with the occasional spell of oppressive heat and humidity, which we've done over the last day or two, now that pretty much is off the page for us for the remainder of the holiday, although we will go back to higher levels of humidity, I think, by the time we get to the middle and latter part of this upcoming week.
By the way, Chuck Cardillo says, and he's right about this. When they named Colin, the center, by the way, was inland when they did it. Now, I can remember a couple of times where that's happened before,
That's
and
even more ridiculous.
yeah,
That's even more ridiculous. When the darn thing was out over the ocean, they gave it like a 10% probability, a 20% probability of any kind of development. They waited until the thing was over land, and then they said, "Okay, now that it's over land, let's give it a name."
right.
I
Well,
mean,
I mean that's happened from time to time along the Gulf Coast, but in the times that it happens along the Gulf Coast, I can remember it was either last year or 2 years ago. I forgot what storm it was where that actually happened, but they were getting 50 to 60 knot winds along the coast when that occurred. So, all right, that's obvious. Okay, that's obvious. But this one, that was definitely not the case. Everything that was of consequence was really well offshore. And as I said, from what I could see, I mean, I guess they were doing it off, radar and satellite and all the rest of it. And I know they're though those things are usually reasonably accurate. But honestly, if we're going to start naming every low cloud swirl is out there, boy, we're going to be going through the alphabet and the backup list and everything else on a regular basis. Two super chat hits, Joe. We have Michael McGuire saying happy 4th to everybody. Glad to be back in the saddle after a break, which is good. I hope by break you don't mean a bone break, but a work break. And Joseph Mayano wishing a happy 4th of July and a great holiday. And yes, happy 4th of July to everybody, because we'll be here tomorrow, but definitely enjoy the rest of your holiday weekend.
yes, indeed. And Tom Contino, who wants to know everything about everyone and everybody, including us, Joe, has asked this question. Joe Rayo, what did your company charge the Mets to get forecasts? Maybe it's cheaper to use apps. Well, first of all, Tom, let me point out that back in the 80s, when I was working at this private weather service, apps were far in the future. There was no such thing as apps back then. And the Mets, now I don't know whether or not the Mets actually paid us in addition to this little fringe benefit, but our company had our own section along the third base line and the field box section at Shea Stadium. We had 4 box seats for all 81 games of the 19, well, whatever, 80 something season. We had seats to Shea Stadium every single day. A home game was played there. So that was part of the um, compensation, so to speak, for getting forecasts from us, which was a pretty darn good compensation. And we were all very happy with that, except when my boss at uh, at the company that I worked with, who I will not mention the name of, in '86 when we made the playoffs in the World Series, um, my boss got a phone call from a company in New Jersey, a ticket broker, who asked if we'd be interested to let those tickets go for the postseason. And my boss, without even telling any of the other members of the staff, said, "Sure, why not? I dig it." And he sold those tickets. He kind of pulled the rug out from underneath us. I mean, here we are, talking about which game we were going to go to, which World Series game, which playoff game. And all of a sudden, we find out that there were no tickets because our boss decided he would sell them to a ticket broker and make a zillion times more money off of those tickets as opposed to just letting us poor souls who were out in the field, so to speak, out in the vineyard, making these forecasts up for the Mets. Uh, and I guess that's the way it goes.
Yeah. By the way, to my those of you who are on my subscription, my paid platform on Patreon, patreon.com/meteorologist Joe Chaffee. So I put up a special weather in 10 video yesterday, only to discover after I had left the house to go on a road trip, um, not a long road trip, but a long trip that was going to keep me out of away from the house for a bunch of hours, that I put up the wrong video. That I put up the video from from last week. So I had to go in there on my phone and delete it. And unfortunately, there was no way for me to recover it from my phone. I would have to wait to get home, which was until after 9 o'clock last night. And the weather in 10 was dated in that it was talking about the severe weather threat for yesterday afternoon. So I just decided to just pull the whole thing. But I will try to make another one later today. Oh, Joe, we have an idiot on. Um,
Yeah, I know. I've saw him. Thankfully,
yes,
the moderators have been very good at.
yes. Oh,
I wasn't going to make a mention of that, but you know,
apparently it's
thank you,
one
idiot.
of these people that doesn't really, you know, have any kind of social interaction with others. In a physical sense. Let's put it that way. I will put it gently that way. In other words, a loser. Uh,
Yes.
uh, yeah, on the comments section, I get these bots are putting on, and they're in Spanish, getting people to try to link to porn sites and every day when I go in there, I'm deleting like 6, 7, 8 of these. And I wish YouTube, if you're listening to me, YouTube and Google, can you find a way to shut those things off? They shouldn't be getting on in the first place. So, and it's annoying. It's annoying to me. It's annoying. More importantly, it's annoying to my audience. So if you could figure out a way to prevent those bots from, I keep reporting them as spam. I keep blocking them, and it's just an endless exercise. Anyhow, uh, okay, you know what? It's 11:47, and court's about to come back in session for episode 15 of the of Perry Masonry, and I'm gonna do that. I know you've got things to do this afternoon, and
Oh, I've got lots of things to do this afternoon.
yes, it's amazing what you find
Uh,
out what you find out in your life on a daily basis. All right.
yes.
So we'll be here tomorrow night at the usual Monday through Thursday time, which is 7:30 Eastern. Again, enjoy your Fourth of July day 2 of the Fourth of July holiday weekend, and we'll see you tomorrow.
Bye, folks.
Bye, everybody.